topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, welcome to the Bill Martinez Show. Good to have you with us. And our next guest is J. Randy Taraborelli. He's a New York Times bestselling author of Jackie, Janet, and Lee, a Kennedy historian that has documented the life of the Kennedys. His brand new book, Jackie, Public, Private, Secret, gives us an even deeper look after hundreds of interviews that have taken place. People were able to maybe be a little bit more open to address this iconic, not only a political figure, but as a just as a unique woman from American history. It's as I mentioned, he's a New York Times bestselling author. It's a fresh and often startling look at the life of the legendary former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, based on hundreds of interviews with friends, family, and lovers over a 30-year period, as well as previously unreleased material from the JFK Library. This Kennedy historian paints an unforgettable new portrait of a woman whose flaws and contradictions only serve to make her even more iconic. This Kennedy historian author gives a unique and special view of this iconic figure, and we bring him on now. J. Randy Taraborelli, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us.
How you doing, Bill? It's good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Randy. In approaching Jackie, and you've known the Kennedys, their whole sense. And I think the title of this is so perfect because there's the public side, the private side, and certainly the secret side of Jackie that is revealed like never before in this book.
Well, the title is interesting, Bill, because it actually came from Jackie in a conversation that she had with John Warnke, who was the man who designed the JFK gravesite at Arlington. They remained friends throughout Jackie's entire life. And at around the time of her 60th birthday, they were having a conversation about a private matter. And Jackie said to John, she called him Jack. She said, yeah. Jack, you know me. I have 3 lives: public, private, and secret. Mm-hmm. And that's where the title came from. And it certainly is true of Jackie, as it is of most people in the public eye. Right. As you said, a public life that we all know about, a private life that perhaps her friends and family knew about, and then a secret life that not many people knew about at all.
Well, did Warnke fit more in that secret life area?
Bill, he absolutely did, Bill. And I think it's astonishing because Warnke had a 3-year love affair with Jackie from 1964 to 1967 that somehow, I don't know how you can imagine this, but somehow the public did not know about. Wow. And I asked John, how were you able to keep a 3-year relationship with the most famous woman in the world private? And he said, you just simply didn't blab about it to the press. And, and that's what they did, and when you think about it, it's amazing to kind of acknowledge that celebrities can have a private life if they choose to, not go to the media and not be seen in public. And, there are ways to have, a private life. And Jackie she figured that out early in her life. Today, I think it might be more difficult with social media. Right. Today, people really, can't have as much privacy as they might have been able to have in the 60s because everywhere they go, they're photographed and, their entire lives are up on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and Twitter. But back in the 60s, you were actually able to have a 3-year affair with a private person, an architect, actually, and not have it become headline news.
Well, also, you have the devolution of politics and the coin of the realm, which is leaks and secrets. And, today those are quite, fully displayed. So it's hard, as you say, in today. And I don't know necessarily it's social media as much as it is, the journalistic class. They seem to be more gossip columnists than journalists, in my humble opinion, Randy. And that might sound a little harsh, so forgive me.
No, I totally agree with you, Bill. I totally agree with you. That Jackie is of a time and place, and so many people who've read my book have brought this to my attention. That there was once upon a time, people were given privacy, and there were not secretaries leaking information. There was no family member that she had who was going to the press with information about her. Right. There was trust, and we don't necessarily have that today. Today, most public figures have that person in their circle who's going to TMZ, with information, and that wasn't necessarily the case back in a certain time in a certain place.
Well, the only person that had those kind of files was J. Edgar Hoover, right?
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. And J. Edgar Hoover, I have had the opportunity to go into the FBI's files on J. Edgar Hoover. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you the honest truth, Bill. And I never have an opportunity to discuss this. In fact, I don't think I've ever discussed this on air anywhere. But man, those files are so full of misinformation. Like back then, and perhaps even today. I don't want to know. I don't want to speak about today, but perhaps even today, any person can go to the FBI with information, and that information becomes a part of the FBI's files, whether it's true or not. And I decided a long time ago to ignore the FBI's files on all Kennedys across the board because they cannot be verified. It's just information that has been given to the FBI that the FBI then includes in its files. And then that information is deemed to be relevant and, and acknowledged as true when actually it's just information that's just going out there without anybody nobody like me going back to verify its accuracy. I can't use every story that comes my way in my books.
Right. Exactly.
I just can't. You have to go back and you've got to double source it, triple source it. You have to figure out if it's accurate. You have to figure out if the person has an axe to grind. You have to figure out, what the motivation is of the source. But often the FBI just includes it in its files, and people look it up and they see it there and they think it's true, and it's really not.
Well, and the thing that makes it so dangerous, Randy, to your point, is somebody might pick up on it and they make a headline out of it. And it hasn't been properly vetted. But, this again is what we've been reduced to, is whatever will get a click, whatever will get a headline. This is where social media comes into play, to your point. And this is dangerous and this is disinformation. But right now, I think we need to have some discipline and understanding how we categorize our information, whether it is truly disinformation or if it's just some 30-somethings idea of disinformation because it doesn't rhyme with their emotional reason.
I totally agree with you, Bill. I think a lot of it has to do with educating the public as well. Right. And I think that the fact that this is, one of the rare times that I've ever discussed it is probably, not an advantage. I think that guys like me, who are reporters who actually have access to the FBI files, need to perhaps come forward to educate the public that just because something is in the FBI file, you figure the FBI file would, carry some kind of weight just by virtue of the name FBI file, right? Right. And you have to, people like me, reporters like me, perhaps need to come forward and say, look, here's what the FBI files are. It's not good and it's not bad. It's just what it is. What it is information that has come to the FBI from all sorts of sources. And the FBI then includes it in their filings. and then it's there for the world to see whether or not it's been proven to be true,
Right.
or whether it's been vetted in any way, is up
Exactly.
for grabs. And that's not a hit on the FBI. It's been that way since the beginning of the FBI.
It's just the way you have to manage the information, Randy. We're talking with J. Randy Taraborelli, New York Times bestselling author. His new book, Jackie, Public, Private, Secret. Randy, as a Kennedy historian, let's go back and rewind for just a moment and consider Jackie as a child. Bring us up to date. Tell us about her upbringing.
Well, she was born and raised in New York City. Her mom, Janet Auchincloss, was a formidable presence in her life. She was tough. She was strict. She was, I wrote an entire book about her, Jackie, Janet, and Lee. And I'm a big fan of Janet Auchincloss's, but she did have her own way of raising her two daughters, Jackie and Jackie's sister Lee. I'm lucky enough to have as one of my primary sources Janet's only son, Jamie Auchincloss, who is Jackie's half brother, and who was able to give me a real sense of how Jackie was raised in New York, and the trouble and the problems that her mother Janet had with Jackie's father, Jack Bouvier, who was unfaithful to her for many years until they finally divorced, and then Janet remarried a gentleman named Hugh Auchincloss, and this is Jamie's father, who was very wealthy. And when Jackie was 13 years old, she moved into this big estate in Newport, which was Hugh's home, Hammersmith Farms. And Jackie and Hugh Auchincloss, her stepfather, were very close, and Hugh actually gave her away at both of her weddings. Yeah. And in this book, Public, Private, Secret, I spent a lot of time explaining who Hugh Auchincloss was, because he's never been written about before, and he's a fascinating man, and he really is very largely responsible for helping to raise Jackie.
Yeah, well, it says a lot, when you consider the chemistry. I mean, he's her stepfather, but you have this sense that they enjoyed a very, very special relationship, didn't they?
Well, yeah, thank you for saying that, Bill, because it's very true. And in fact, on the night that JFK was assassinated, Jackie asked Hugh to please sleep in JFK's bed in the White House. And a lot of people were like, well, that is the strangest request ever. And Hugh felt very awkward. He had never even been in JFK's bedroom. And so to sleep in JFK's bed the night that he was murdered, Hugh didn't know what to make of that. Yeah. But Jamie, his son, explained to me that what they finally figured out was that Jackie realized somebody was going to sleep in that bed, because the White House was filled with people, relatives and diplomats and dignitaries and friends and associates. And Jackie was afraid that some person was going to end up in that bed who shouldn't have ever had the honor. Exactly. And so she wanted to make sure that she was able to control that. And so she asked Hugh Auchincloss to please sleep in that bed that night, and he did.
Can you imagine, Randy, the capacity for her to consider that in the midst of all that she was dealing with, the grief? She always seemed to be ahead of everyone else, and especially it seemed to be manifest quite clearly during the whole process of the funeral, and in orchestrating all the elements of JFK's, funeral. It's amazing. But to think that even that she would consider, how could she do that? I mean, I would think my brain would be going in so many 50 million directions. I couldn't even think about eating or anything else.
Well, the rest of that story, Bill, is that, late into the evening, there was a knock on the door, and Hugh went to answer it, and it was Jackie. And she was crying, and she said that she wasn't able to sleep and she was having nightmares. And he brought her into the bedroom, and he put her into the president's bed and pulled the covers up over her, and he sat with her for the rest of the night. So as much as she was trying to keep it together, and she had lists, and she was organized, and she was trying her best to sort of facilitate this international event, this funeral.
Exactly.
Privately, she really was falling apart.
You talk about her organization. This was part of her wiring. I mean, she had a great skill set when it came to organizing, right?
She really did. She and I think that she got that from her mom, from Janet Auchincloss. That everything had to be exactly right for the funeral, and she wanted to make sure that that nothing went wrong, and and that took a toll. But she felt a responsibility to the country,
right,
and to the president, to give him the kind of send off that would be historical and would always be remembered, and also that would hold the country together during this terrible time.
That's the thing that stuck out for me as well, Randy, was that her capacity to consider the hearts of the country. Here she is. I mean, it's almost like she made a deliberate decision and choice to set her emotions aside for the sake of the country's.
That is so true. And that's such a great way of putting it, Bill, because that is exactly the case. But I want to also say that because she was able to put forth, this image of strength, and of course, it wasn't real image making, and she really was strong, and she really was courageous. But the public began to feel like she was fine, because there she is, and she looks like she is, she's a rock of, fortitude and strength, but she suffered from PTSD over what happened to JFK for the rest of her life, all the way to the end of her life. In fact, the last conversation that John Warneke, the architect that we mentioned earlier, the last conversation that he had with Jackie, which was shortly before her death, he asked her if she had any regrets. And according to what he told me, she said that she had one regret, and her regret was that she allowed Dallas, the assassination, to poison her entire life. Wow. And she was never able to reconcile what happened to JFK that day and the way that he died right at her side. And it really speaks a lot to Jackie's, sort of survivor instinct, that she told Warneke that she felt that if she had just 10 more years, she would be able to deal with what happened in Dallas. And think of this. She had been trying to deal with it for 30 years by this time. Yes. And she felt that if she only had 10 more years, she'd be able to do it. And that really says a lot about, PTSD and how difficult it is to cope with this kind of trauma and tragedy in a person's life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I can only imagine, Randy, I mean, here it is at every anniversary of the president's assassination. I mean, how could she avoid, being reminded, either, just passing a television set by accident or whatever, turning on a radio, hearing, again, the announcement from Walter Cronkite that the president was dead. I mean, things like that. How do you, when you're dealing with PTSD and constantly reminded of the pain that had given you and captured your psychology and your mentality for all these years, it's almost like she couldn't get away from it, could she?
Well, you're exactly right. John Kennedy Jr. told me, I interviewed him back in the 1990s, and something he told me, and I included it in the book because it just affected me so, was that at every anniversary of his father's death, there would be magazine articles and there would be all pictures of Jackie at the assassination wearing the pink dress with the blood on it. Right. And John would always go to his mother and take these magazines from her and hide them and tell her, I don't want you to see these things. Like he was so protective of her that he just did not want her to be reminded of this terrible day that continued to haunt her for her entire life. And there are stories in the book about the different anniversaries along the way. Mm-hmm. And one of them is, I forget, I think it was the 10th anniversary, and she was at Ethel Kennedy's home in Hickory Hill, and Ethel Kennedy was having a mass at the house for JFK, and also for Bobby, of course.
Right.
And Jackie and Ethel were trying to console each other, and they just could not believe that this terrible thing had happened to both of them.
Yes.
Imagine the sisters-in-law. Yeah. Imagine two sisters-in-law in a family who witnessed the murder of their husbands in exactly the same way, a shot to the head. I mean, what are the chances of this happening in any family? It's just unbelievable.
Well, we're talking with New York Times bestselling author J. Randy Taraborelli, Jackie, Public, Private, Secret. More from him after this. Stay with us.
This radio commercial was made to convince you to stop speeding. We can't use siren sound effects on the radio, so we'll use other equally jarring sound effects to get your attention. Like telling you that whether you drive a little over the speed limit or a lot, you can crash just the same. You could hurt yourself or worse, others.
I'm at the scene of the collision.
And the damage you cause will be beyond repair. See? We didn't have to use crash or siren sounds after all. Speeding catches up with you. Brought to you by NHTSA.
Hi, I'm Ronnie Deutsch, and if you or your business owe money to the IRS, I've got great news for you. Tax laws have changed. Billions of dollars are earmarked for IRS Fresh Start programs, and if you qualify, you can literally save tens of thousands of dollars. Listen, I know what you're going through. Call me if you want to speak with a tax attorney or tax professional for free.
800-247-1498. Has your heater or air conditioner busted? Appliance broken? Computer crashed? Then you need an ARW home warranty. Home system and appliance repairs and replacements can cause stress and cost you thousands of dollars per year. With an A-plus BBB rating and a top-rated home warranty company on Consumer Affairs and Trustpilot, ARW Home provides superior service, featuring the industry's lowest service call fee. ARW Home has warranty plans that cover your kitchen and laundry appliances, heating and air conditioning systems, electrical and plumbing systems, and much more. Call 800-559-7562 to customize your plan. Plus, ARW has partnered with Azurian to protect your new and used tablets, laptops, TVs, and other home tech from accidental damage and wear and tear. All plans come with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Call 800-559-7562.
Do you have Medicare and do you use a CPAP machine? This is a national healthcare alert regarding your CPAP supplies. Using a clean CPAP mask and clean supplies is important to staying healthy. The best way to make sure your CPAP equipment is clean is to get new supplies. If you have Medicare, we have great news. Medicare will pay for you to have new clean supplies every 90 days. We'll even do all the paperwork for you to make sure that there's little to no out-of-pocket cost to you. And you don't even have to leave your home. We provide free in-home delivery. So if you're a CPAP user and you have Medicare, staying healthy with new CPAP equipment is easy. Just make this free phone call right now to get started.
Sponsored by Specialty Medical. 800-254-1421. 800-254-1421. 800-254-1421.
Welcome back. Bill Martinez here. We're talking with New York Times bestselling author J. Randy Taraborelli, his new book, Jackie, Public, Private, Secret. Randy, let's revisit a little bit and remember how Jackie, became a Kennedy and the courtship between her and John F. Kennedy.
I think what's interesting, Bill, is that it's because of Jackie's mom, really, that Jackie ended up with JFK. Mm-hmm. What I learned while researching this book was that JFK's interest originally was in Jackie's sister, Lee. Mm-hmm. And Jackie was fine with that. She didn't have an attraction to JFK, and she mm-hmm. was fine with her sister being with JFK. However, it was their mother, Janet, who said, her quote was that it's time to get Jackie settled. And back in the 1950s, if a woman wasn't settled by the time she was 23, meaning married with children,
yeah, right,
then there was an issue.
Right.
And Janet just felt like it was time for Jackie to be settled because Lee was only 19, Jackie was 23. Mm-hmm. And so Janet said to Jackie, you need to, reintroduce yourself to JFK and see if there's something there. And you need to try harder, is what she told her. And so ultimately that's what happened. And JFK became interested in Jackie. But you have to wonder, in this chapter in my book is called What If, for a reason, because you have to wonder, what if Janet had not intervened? Would it be possible that Lee Radziwill would have had Jackie's life? Yeah. And believe me, I'm not the first person to wonder this. Because everybody in the family has been wondering about this for, more than 50 years, that Jamie.
But were the two girls, though, that similar, that there could have been that interchange? Because I sensed that, these were two unique women raised by a strong mom who definitely had a plan. But I at least maybe I'm mistaken here, Randy, but I kind of see them as two unique individuals, but I can appreciate why somebody said, well, what if? Yeah, right.
Well, they were very different, and but they were both very beautiful, and they were very charismatic, and his original interest was in Lee. So that's just the fact. And you have to wonder if they had let nature take its course, would he have ended up with the one that he was interested in, as opposed to the other one? Who knows? But I just think
was there any indication of JFK looking over his shoulder and saying shoulda, coulda, woulda?
No, not to my knowledge. There wasn't. Once he got to know Jackie, it was really hard to resist her. And she was, she had a style all her own, and the two of them fell in love, and and that was the story. But there was always a rivalry and a tension between Jackie and her sister Lee, and I would say that it doesn't stretch the imagination to think that this situation probably only intensified.
Right, you married my man. How dare you?
Right. And then, go ahead, Bill.
But to your point, whenever you look at pictures of JFK and Jackie, they look like they were just enjoying themselves. I mean, it wasn't like, I mean, these are random pictures. It wasn't like, hey, pose for the camera. I mean, they genuinely looked like they were enjoying themselves, especially when they were around the kids.
I think that, you're right about that. They had a great love and affection for each other. And it was not easy for Jackie because we all know about JFK's infidelities.
Right.
And she, she had to learn to live with that and had to figure out how to navigate that marriage despite all of that. Right. And, the mom, I have to say, according to Janet's son, Jamie, Janet had a lot of reservations about having campaigned so hard for JFK once Jackie was in the marriage, and they realized that JFK was not going to be faithful. Right. The mom felt responsible for, some of the heartbreak that her daughter experienced in the marriage. This isn't to say that Jackie wasn't happy. It's just to say that it wasn't easy, Well,
because you're talking about a time when the idea of sex addiction wasn't that prevalent, right?
Yes, you are. And you're talking also about a time when, prior to the feminism movement of the 1970s, women were a little bit more accepting of these kinds of things. Like they used to say, great men have great flaws.
Yes.
In order to sort of justify this kind of behavior. And Jackie felt very differently about all of this in the 1970s. Because, in the 1960s, when Joan Kennedy, Ted Kennedy's wife, went to Jackie to ask her, what do I do about Ted's infidelity? Jackie told her, well, you just have to deal with it. You have to deal with it for the family, and you just have to deal with it. Right. In the 1970s, when Ted was still being unfaithful to Joan, right. And Joan went to Jackie and asked for advice, Jackie gave Joan her divorce lawyer. So you see this gradual evolution in women, from the 60s to the 70s, and many of their, the ways that they thought about marriage in the 1960s, they no longer felt that way in the 1970s, and Jackie certainly did not.
Randy, that could almost be a book in itself if you just did a historical perspective on first ladies that were cheated on.
Oh my gosh. You got to wonder,
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
I personally think that maybe the only, no, I don't really think I can think of a president who didn't cheat on his wife, other than, I guess, perhaps Barack Obama. I would be surprised to find if I've never heard of a Barack Obama mistress, but
right.
You certainly heard of, and you know what? I've never heard of a George W. Bush mistress.
Well, I know they tried to throw Condoleezza Rice in the pit a couple of times, but that's the nature. They're always you're.
I've never heard. I mean, I've written a book about Barbara Bush, Laura Bush, and Dorothy Bush. It was called Grace and Steel, and I did a lot of research on George W. And I've never heard of a George W. Bush mistress that I personally believed. So I think that that's kind of maybe the exception to the rule. You're right. It would be an interesting research project, to do something like that.
Well, it's amazing because as you look and you're appreciating all these dynamics, you have a big component of, the Kennedy mistake was Camelot. And you write about that. Tell us.
Well, when after JFK was assassinated, Jackie, wanted to frame the Kennedy presidency in a way that would be memorable, and she, had sort of romanticized, if you will, a lot of what happened as Camelot, and a lot of people felt that JFK would never have approved of that. That was much more romantic in thinking than JFK ever was as a man or as a president. But Jackie was a very sort of fanciful, romantic, imaginative, creative person. And she gave an interview and spoke of Camelot, and that caught on after that interview.
Boy, it sure did. Didn't it?
And even today, people think of the Kennedy administration as a sort of idealistic Camelot-like administration.
Wow, this has been just an incredible ride and journey to revisit, and especially the new material, Randy, that you were able to bring forth. You were able to interview hundreds of people, and one of the things you talked about was that, at times when you wouldn't be able to get information, from people while Jackie was alive, you were able to, kind of pierce a little bit of, of the veneer, if I might say, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I mean, be able to, break through and talk to some of her friends that normally, would not be open because of the nature of Jackie. Because boy, if you were in her inner circle, you had to know that there was that, that public, private, secret part of her life, and those were clear boundaries. And if you violated those boundaries, then you were pretty much 86th, weren't you?
Well, yeah, no doubt about it. Another thing, Bill, that has happened is, sort of my growth as an historian over the last 25 years as a Kennedy historian. And when people read my books, they realize that you're getting, an empathetic, true story in a way that is not a hatchet job, or in a way that, is overly critical or sensational.
Yeah, exactly.
And so my reputation sort of has preceded me with each Kennedy book. And all I really have to do with a source who might have second thoughts is, send my previous Kennedy books as my best representation of what I do. And if you read them and you like them, then you'll talk to me. If you don't like them, then you won't. And there's nothing I can do about that, but I give it my best. I give each book my best shot at, I think the way I was raised in Philadelphia, where I am actually right now, is to be fair and to be honest. and to not take advantage of people, and to just kind of be a good person.
Exactly.
And I think I have been able to bring that to my work, and that's what's helped me get to sources and get them to trust me.
We come back. We've got more from J. Randy Taraborelli. The book, Jackie, Public, Private, and Secret. Stay with us. More after this.
Thinking of sharing a hotel room with your dog this summer? Hi, I'm Dr. Lori Teller, president of the American Veterinary Medical Association, with some tips. Before you book your stay, check if your dog is allowed and get an understanding about any other restrictions they may have on pets. Think about your dog's personality and health before bringing them. Sometimes boarding might be less stressful for Fido than a road trip and hotel stay. Make sure your dog is healthy and up to date on vaccinations. Pack a travel kit for your pooch with food, water, medications, leash, and more. Try to keep to your normal routine as much as possible when it comes to things like meals and walks. Consistency goes a long way. And keep pet etiquette in mind. Keep your dog on a leash in public places and don't leave them alone in the room for a long stretch. If left alone, puzzle feeders or long-lasting treats can help. There's more valuable pet information at avma.org.
Home sales are down 31% across America, and mortgage rates are on the rise. If your home is not selling, you need to call our experts right now at the Quick Cash Hotline. We have investors ready to pay you cash for your property, regardless of the condition it's in. Most of our closings can happen in about 7 days. You don't have to worry about a buyer getting approved. You don't have to worry about showing your home. One simple call right now. Just pick up the phone and call us. I'll give you the number in a second. We will negotiate with you a price to buy your home. It's that simple. If you're ready to sell your home right now, any home, any condition, and you don't want to put money into it, no problem. We'll buy it from you. Call right now. It's a free call.
800-217-6459. 800-217-6459. 800-217-6459. How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're going to love it, and you're going to love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-699-0358. 800-699-0358. 800-699-0358.
Well, welcome back. Bill Martinez here. We're talking with J. Randy Taraborelli. His new book, Jackie, Public, Private, Secret. New York Times best-selling author. Comes a fresh, often startling look at the life of this legendary First Lady, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. It's based on hundreds of interviews with friends, family, and lovers over a 30-year period, as well as previously unreleased material from the JFK Library. The Kennedy historian paints an unforgettable new portrait of a woman whose flaws and contradictions only serve to make her even that much more endearing and iconic, I might say. And before the break, we were talking, Randy, that when you go and you interview people and you give them samples of past interviews, and the other thing that I appreciate about your approach to this is that if an interviewee had any contest with what you said and were uncomfortable and wanted to edit or be eliminated, you didn't necessarily pitch a fit. You accommodated their request. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, Bill, it happens all the time. because I do something that most reporters don't do, and I understand why they don't do it.
Yeah.
And maybe they have good reasons, but for me, I have never wanted to have a person be interviewed for one of my books and then be filled with regret about having said who knows what, And so what I do is I send a transcript of what it is that they said back to them so that they can have an opportunity to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, 99.99% of the time they will change it, because nothing is more shocking than seeing your words in print, But I'd rather they have an opportunity to do that before the book comes out than be upset about the book, because these are people's precious family memories, and gosh, no story is worth having somebody be upset over having shared it. I'd rather look, I tell my research team, there are so many stories in the world. This one particular story that this person doesn't want told doesn't need to be told. I always say, just because something is true doesn't mean it needs to be known.
Right.
And you might think that that's strange coming from a biographer, but I do still adhere to that. Just because something is true doesn't mean it needs to be known.
I think that's a value that your parents instilled on you. That's old school. I was raised the same way, about doing unto others the way you would want them to do unto you, and we've lost sight of that, Randy. And this culture, our country is paying a price for the lack of civility and what we would refer to as common respect. Today in the social media world, as we touched on, it's all about clicks, about salaciousness, just about I don't know, raising curiosities in an area that doesn't necessarily benefit anybody, but the person that's putting it out there, they think, because in the long run, if that was your modus operandi, people wouldn't want to talk to you. And even if they did, they would just know, well, this is the type of journalist Randy is. And they would question certainly a little bit of your integrity, if not your ethics.
Well, thank you for saying that. I agree with you. My book debuted on Sunday on the New York Times list at number 3. Wow. Which is a pretty high debut. And I think that there's a fascination about Jackie, of course, that is enduring, and people want, they want it to be approached respectfully, and that's what I tried to do with this book. I tried to be as respectful of her as I possibly could, but at the same time, I wanted to tell a real true story about her that would be historically accurate and and withstand the test of time. So I'm hoping that I was able to achieve that with this book.
Well, I got to tell you, Randy, I believe you did. This is just for people who have a sense of endearment for the First Lady. As you said, she wasn't an angel, she wasn't perfect, but she was another one of us, in the journey of life, a mother, a wife, an iconic figure and blessed in so many ways. And here it is. I mean, she's there experiencing, like you said, the traumatic experience of, watching her husband's head blown off and going through all that. And as you said, suffering with PTSD till the day she died. And even afterwards, trying to find some respite, some place where she could go and maybe process, what had happened to her, because, one moment, she's the First Lady, she's in the White House, and the next moment, things are being packed and her world's upside down here. I can only imagine what she must have endured.
Well, you're absolutely right, Bill. I mean, her whole identity became, the First Lady. Yeah. And when that was taken from her, it was instantaneously taken from her. They wanted her out of the White House, and LBJ was so nice to her, and he allowed her to stay far longer than any president should have been expected to allow the former family to stay at the White House, but he was very gracious to her. And, her life changed. And also, as I wrote in the book, her family's life changed.
Exactly.
Hugh Auchincloss, he said to Jamie at one point, we lost it all. Like the entire family's existence had
their
been
whole identity.
Yeah. Had all been, the president would go to their home in Newport for weekends. It was called the Newport White House. They got used to the idea of, the president is coming on Friday. They loved JFK. They loved America. They were patriots. And when all of that was just taken from them, it not only affected Jackie, but it affected everybody in the family. And they all had to figure out, how do we go forward now?
Right. There was often written about the contention, the dynamic tension between the president and vice president, JFK and Lyndon Baines Johnson. It's heartwarming to consider that Lyndon, was compassionate towards Jackie in allowing her to make the transition, because it doesn't necessarily comport with the kind of things that were thrown out about these two families.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I had the opportunity to go to the LBJ Library and see dozens of letters between Jackie and LBJ over the years, over the span of his life. I think he was only 64 when he died, which is astonishing to me.
Right.
But if you read this correspondence, you see how close they were. And how much affection Jackie had, and they shared this moment in time.
Exactly.
And there's a terrible picture of them on Air Force One. When LBJ is coming back, and he's taking the oath of office, and Jackie is standing there looking, paralyzed, and it's just they shared this time, and I think they never forgot it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got about 3 minutes left here, Randy. We hadn't even touched on the relationship, the marriage, with Onassis, and also, her final days. So I'm going to let you kind of summarize that, and take us to the end here. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we're talking about 35 years, but I could just say that she did find happiness.
Yes.
And she. Despite her PTSD, she did find happiness. And I want to also say that, she was her mother's biggest champion when Janet was suffering from Alzheimer's. And Jackie became, as I wrote in this book for the first time, her chief and primary caretaker for 10 years. Wow. And it's a real interesting and good story of a daughter caring for her mother during the most challenging time in the mom's life. And I think it's a story that should be told, because many people can identify with, caring for an elderly parent with Alzheimer's. It's not easy. And Jackie somehow did it while she was also an editor at Doubleday in New York City, working 5 days a week in New York, going to Newport on weekends to care for her mother, and without anybody knowing anything about it until now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good story, and I hope people have a chance to read the book. I think that they'll enjoy it.
Yeah, without a doubt, it is one that just keeps, it captures you from one chapter to the next, Randy. It is so well written, and you've blessed us greatly by doing that. And I didn't mean to, put you on the spot so much, because there's just so much more. And I know that even the first time you and I said, look, we need more time. And even now that we got more time, we need more time again. But for our viewers, you got all the time once you get your hands on the book from J. Randy Taraborelli, New York Times bestselling author of Jackie, Janet, and Lee. This new book, Jackie, Public, Private, and Secret. About a minute left here. What's your want and hope and desire that the readers would take, from this, because you gave us a lot of new things to think about and to understand about this iconic figure that, still is held in highest esteem in our hearts.
Thanks for asking, Bill. I just want to bring people closer to the legend. It's funny, when JFK was assassinated, Jackie said, "Now he's legend when he would have preferred to just be human," and that is true of Jackie as well. She's a legend, but all she really wanted to do was be a woman and a mother and a daughter. And so this book is really about the woman, the mother, the daughter, the sister. And the person that Jackie was. So thanks for having me on to talk about it, Bill. I really appreciate it.
Randy, God bless you. Thank you so much. This is so awesome. Thanks again to Randy Terbarelli for being with us. His brand new book, Jackie, Public, Private, Secret. You must read this. This is going to be powerful to you. And the added insight that he gives, and the team, the research that they've done. This isn't about being salacious. It's about being historically correct and respectful. You're going to be blessed by it. Hey, our thanks again to Randy Terbarelli for coming on the show. For more information and to be a part of this mighty Martinez movement to return to God and to save our country, go to BillMartinezShow.com. May God bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you. Go and be blessed beyond your imagination. Thanks again for being with us.